Have you ever stopped to think about what actually happens when you hit submit on a web form? It feels instant, right? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain and map out that hidden journey your data takes, all the way from your browser to a server. We're going to visualize this whole thing as a communication pipeline to really see how the web works.
Seriously, think about it. You type your name into a box, click a button, and something happens. But it's not magic. It is a very deliberate, carefully constructed pipeline. So where does that info actually end up? And how in the world does it get there? Let's follow the data and find out. All right, so our data's journey kicks off with probably the most common method you're going to see out there in the wild. We're talking about a simple HTML form that uses what's called the get method. So it all starts right here, with this one little attribute in the HTML, method equals get. This simple instruction is everything. It tells the browser exactly how to package up all the data from these input fields for the first leg of its journey. And, as you'll see, it's a very public way of doing things.
And boom, this is what happens. The browser takes that data and literally sticks it onto the end of the URL. This whole part after the question mark is called a query string. See how it's just key-value pairs? We've got first name equals John and last name equals Doe, separated by an ampersand. It's all right there in the open, which means you could even bookmark this URL and send it to someone.
Okay, so the data has traveled through the internet, packaged inside the URL, and arrived at our Express server. So how does the server grab it? Well, with this ridiculously simple piece of code. Express is smart enough to automatically parse that query string for us and puts everything into a handy object called recQuery. From there, we just pluck out the first name and last name like any other object property. And just like that, the pipeline is complete.
But hold on, what if you're sending something sensitive, like a password or maybe some private feedback? You definitely don't want that just sitting in the URL for anyone to see. For that kind of information, our data needs to take a different, more discrete path. And that brings us to the post method.
So now, let's look at a different form, maybe for leaving feedback. This one uses method equals post. When you fill this out and hit submit, you'll notice something really important. The URL in your browser, it doesn't change. It's clean. The data isn't there. So where did it go? It went into something called the request body, and this right here is the fundamental difference between get and post. With get, the data's in the URL. It's mainly used for reading or retrieving information. That's why we call it safe and independent. You can make the same get request 1,000 times and nothing on the server will change. But post is for creating or changing data. The information is hidden away in the request body, and it is absolutely not independent. If you submit the same post request twice, you might end up creating 2 user accounts or sending 2 orders. That's a huge difference.
Now, on the server side, grabbing this hidden data requires one extra step. We need a little helper, which we call middleware. All it does is process the request before our main code sees it. In this case, express.url encoded is the middleware that knows how to find and unpack that hidden request body for us. Once we tell our app to use it, all our form data magically appears in the rec.body object. So easy recap. Get uses rec.query for URL data. Post uses rec.body for hidden data.
Okay, so having to build a front-end form every single time you want to test your server gets old fast. It's slow, it's clunky. This is where developers pull out their secret weapon, a tool that lets us talk directly to our communication pipeline, Postman.
You can think of Postman as like a universal remote for the web. It lets you completely cut out the middleman, the browser. You can craft any kind of HTTP request you want. Get, post, anything. Send it directly to your server and see the raw response. It's your direct line to the back end.
So what's the big deal? Why is this such a game changer? I mean, why not just use the HTML form we already built?
Because it lets you completely separate your work. You can build and perfect your entire server-side logic, your whole API, before a single line of HTML or CSS has even been written. You can throw weird data at it, you can simulate error conditions, and you can find bugs in your pipeline so much faster. It lets you isolate the back end and make sure it's absolutely rock solid. Development speed goes way, way up.
So let's say we want to test our feedback endpoint without the form. In Postman, it's super easy. First, you set the method to post. You paste in the URL to your server, then you go to the body tab, you pick the right format, which for our form is XWW form URL'd, and you just add the same key value pairs the form would have sent. You click send, and that's it. You've just perfectly simulated a browser submission.
And this ability to easily switch methods leads to a really elegant design pattern. Take a look at this. The same exact URL, /items, can do 2 totally different things.
If you send a GET request, it reads the data. If you send a POST request to that same URL, it adds new data. The method becomes the verb, the action, and the URL becomes the noun, the thing you're acting on. This is pretty much the foundation of all modern API design.
So, when you truly understand GET, POST, and a tool like Postman, you're not just writing lines of code anymore. You're actually learning how to architect and master the entire flow of information across the web.
Let's just step back and look at what you can do now. You know how to build Express endpoints that handle different kinds of incoming data. You get the core idea behind RESTful APIs, and you can professionally test that entire communication pipeline from end to end with Postman. I'm not kidding. These are the absolute foundational skills for building any real-world web application.
So, the pipeline is no longer a mystery, right? You can see the data's journey, you can choose its path with GET or POST, and you have the tools to inspect and test every single connection along the way. The only question left is, now that you have this power, what are you going to build with it?